So anyway, so that's why I was saying I go to the night salad.
I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order.
I'm getting the live stream on.
What's that?
I'm getting the live stream on.
Well,
Right, yeah,
Don,
but she's not.
I'm out of here too.
For discussion.
I got lots to do and I'm deflated.
Deflated.
I did want
We're all
to do.
Oh, I know. That's why it hasn't been turned on. So I'm gonna say no.
It is.
I think.
I could make it great, okay, but all this negative stuff from top, so to speak. Oh, I've got it, I have a proposal, this costs less than 10 grand to make that thing look good. But if we still have the same foundation,
They have it
but it would look good, there's no question.
Okay, I'm calling the meeting to order.
Could it what?
I'm gonna skip the pledge of allegiance because we did that earlier. Roll call.
Mr. Barron,
Here.
Mr. Christensen,
Present.
Mr. Noonan.
Here.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment?
The number to call in is 256-8109. There is nobody.
Okay. Moving on to agenda additions or deletions. Is there any, I mean, this is a pretty loose format that doesn't have to be too rigid. We're just discussing how we want to structure next year's budget, what we're asking for, if we're going to ask for an increase in the budget, things like that. What, you know, we got to feel for what's important in each part. Just anything to add, Dave?
Well, Mr. Popa here has raised a big issue. I mean, in terms of potential, and that is John has suggested the need for the entire Parks and Rec Commission having a, John, what's the best term, John? An assistant?
Did you find that piece of paper?
I haven't had a chance to go look for it, but I don't recall seeing it.
I sent it to you on the 26th of May. I've got it right here, John. I can read you all that you wrote. A skilled assistant for Parks and Rec. You identified that someone gave you the idea.
Go ahead.
We need help getting things done. We need to follow, this position would be a person who would follow through on bids, other project requirements, parks plans, work with committees on grant development, and that sort of thing. He's suggesting a position which would not be a county employee, it would be a contract worker as a consultant or assistant. And John was suggesting something like $25,000 a year for a part-time position.
I thought of this, when we had candidates that wanted to get on Parks and Rec, I remember two hot shots that were really good. They worked on parks before. And someone told me to submit this. I'm not gonna tell you who. But they said, you have such a hard time. This guy wants to go out for bids on that, and that guy doesn't know how to write this grant, and yada, yada, yada. And to not bring it into the county employee thing and benefits, some of these people would come in and work for $20 an hour. And we'd say, okay, can you get this RFP and these sketches drawn up and do this and do that and get it in the Laurel by next Friday? Where's the monkey all the time? You know, this grub check. Go meet with buildings and grounds, the building people and do that and get us a quote and inspect the thing. Instead of giving it to Scott all the time, we're mowing lawns, we could tell this person, and they could attend our meetings, and they could also help out on a lot of stuff. Can you get a hold of the schools and get them out there to pull weeds next week? And the person might have 2 hours in it. And they said, submit for something where you have a good technical person that can chase around all this stuff. You don't use it, they don't use it. But I'm sure there's a few things we can do, and they're not just gonna go blow it and spend that money, but we'd hire that person as a contract. Just like we got guys that contract out in weeds and some other stuff like that. So I thought I'd just submit it as whatever, and I don't know all the words, but I was gone that May 19th meeting. I says, there's two things I want to submit to you guys. One is that, and one to pave that parking lot.
I didn't see it either.
And you don't remember seeing it. It wasn't brought up at the meeting.
No, it wasn't. I didn't bring it up at that meeting. I really saved it for this meeting.
Okay,
I'll go check my email.
Well, yeah, and it was a list of things that John had brought to my attention for,
well, he read it. We just got to then put it on a correct form, Laurel, and attach it to it. You have the board yay or nay it, and I won't mind being at the board and present it.
Look, we're talking at this point as part of your budget narrative for next year. So you would
Correct.
include it in whatever documentation you're discussing now.
Correct.
And that's me submitting it to Jen.
That's my case, that's all. I think we need to, people just don't have time to do some of this stuff,
Yeah,
and they're volunteers.
Scott's always struggled. I mean, I know he's had some relief this year with, he's got somebody helping him now, but last year was rough and it's always an issue.
well,
Well, look what Dave does at Veronica, he's out there all the time.
Right.
And if there was someone that could, hey, get this and go do that, and meet with this guy and write this grant, and apply for the 2%,
Oh, no, good.
whatever. Anyway,
I understand.
it was a person pretty well set in this building that said you should turn that in for help.
my 2 cents in this is that when I got started on the grant application for the trust fund grant and then the recreational passport, there were several times where I was just amazed that the county would be having someone volunteer in my position, taking this on, doing it. I mean, it's kind of in hindsight that I've looked at it and thought, geez, the county ought to have a professional involved in a lot of these grant applications. There's a lot of technical things that could go much more speedily if we had a focused person. And so that kind of work is, I think, part of what John's thinking about.
That woman she was a professional. She had all kinds of backgrounds and stuff, and she knew parks and recreation and everything,
Yeah, I remember being very impressed by that resume.
this way and sideways and whatever. Her name's in here somewhere.
But I've seen John's point because thinking back on the work I did with those grant applications, there were times, and frankly, Steve, I learned this from Patty O'Donnell when I finally connected with her. It was like, slapped myself, how come I didn't talk to this woman a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago? That kind of knowledge could be really helpful in moving a lot of what we talk about along, if we had that kind of focused professional assistant. I don't know how real that is, but I see why John's come up with this. It could be helpful.
Best thing we could do is ask.
There you go.
How would we do that? I mean, in terms of what,
You put it on that budget form, you put it on this, and it's just like when they hire part-time people. You just put it on a form where we would like so many $1,000.
and then is the narrative you talked about, is that supposedly the justification of each of the things we asked for?
Well, I mean, I can write a whole budget narrative to discuss things, but they give you these sheets, requested subscriptions, requested memberships, requested education, requested travel, but there's nothing about employees.
Let me say this before we're going further. The likelihood that the Board of Commissioners is going to give us a person to write grants is probably pretty nil. However, what you're saying has merit in that should the county have somebody they use, perhaps on a contractual basis, because we're not the only one. Yes, we depend heavily on grant dollars for this committee, but we could use a grant writer in every department in this
Right.
in this building. So I know there's been some talk in the past that sometimes you get grad students and for a few dollars, they'll write your grants because that's a resume builder for them. So there's other ways to go, but You know, we can put it in our budget to hire a grant writer.
Well, it would certainly be more than just grants. I mean, I brought that up.
I don't wanna get hung up on grants.
Yeah, it's,
To help them.
I just don't see it happening. I mean, you can put it in there, I honestly just don't see it happening in another employee, because we did add an employee not long ago. I don't, that's just,
Well, if,
it's also,
would it have to be an employee or could it be,
contractual.
whether or
person.
not it would pass muster with the Board of Commissioners? I think, right now, I just want to brainstorm the idea. Could Parks and Rec contract for an executive assistant or whatever we call it?
Yeah.
I mean, is that something that can be done? Because I
I think
don't
you
know.
always ask for it. I'm not gonna.
I call it a
It's
skill
not my place
assistant.
to do on just one vote, but,
What is Scott's job?
um,
Is he just maintenance?
yes,
So we really don't have like a Parks and Rec director.
no.
No, this is one of the few departments, if the only department, that doesn't have a director. It's all, I mean, that's why we struggle to do what we do in a year, is because there is no head cheese. It's, I mean, me as the chairman, but
I mean,
we meet once a month,
Who
and
is Scott's boss?
Jerry Coleman.
He's in Buildings and Grounds Department technically, but assigned to Parks for maintenance.
So it's something that's been kicked around for a while, because in my experience on this board, we haven't ever asked for it in the budget, but I know it's been talked about a couple different times, and how we wanted to structure when we were asking for the help for Scott, the 40 hours a week or however many hours that is, it's a quarter-time employee. That helps, it's great, but it's still,
Where the contract,
Scott relies on us to do the legwork, or a lot of the legwork as far as getting anything lined up, or the RFPs, he helps with that a lot. I mean, he's doing that when he should be cutting grass or painting buildings.
Why is it, no one's ever answered it for me. I know we don't have a lot of inmates here. Why can't we get, work release inmates to work with Scott?
well, he's done that a little bit in the past.
But I mean, it's like, you know, in most of the other counties, I mean.
Quite often, I think they're,
I mean, we don't
Not-
have a ton of inmates over there to try to
Yeah.
pick from, but I mean, I seem like in the summer months, you know, he could have 2 or 3 extra bodies that,
trying to think, I think health-wise, a lot of times, they just don't fit the criteria to be able to work, but, yeah, I'm just sitting there thinking that the county's looking at potentially adding a, HR, hiring somebody for HR. If that person has experience grant writing, that would be maybe the perfect thing. It hasn't been so many, just a few years ago, we did our own minutes. We've been fortunate to have Laurel kind of step in and be that guiding person for us, because we've just been on our own since we were a committee, and now we're a commission. So we went up to a commission with really no more professional help in anything.
Well, and hopefully, Laurel, you're not going anywhere anytime soon, but if we ever lost Laurel, we'd really be lost.
well, let's put in something for the budget. in case she doesn't.
Not really.
She's gonna win the lottery tomorrow, and see you later.
I think our best bet would be is if the new HR person can write grants or is willing to, well, be part of their description.
I can put it in as a request if that's the wish of,
Yeah, and that's a pretty good outline right there if you want to add to it.
the only thing is, I don't know how to structure that, or where that, do you know where that goes in the, I just ask for it in the budget narrative?
You would probably work with Jen in
Okay.
accounting.
And that's,
It's got to be on one
I
of
don't
those
know,
4
yeah.
forms.
what?
It's got to be on one of those 4 forms.
Yeah, you don't just toss a bunch of stuff in the packet and say, this is what we want.
I think in going for a position, is a different animal than working on all the other budget items.
And that's what my thought was.
You know,
I don't think
we've
it's,
been able to go for a part-time person for Scott. It took a while to get that maneuvered in.
and that wasn't really necessarily part of the budget discussion. It was,
It's, the employee, the whole top part of the budget packet is not something that's ours.
right.
If we as a group would like the county board of commissioners to consider another position, that's a completely separate animal. It's not our budget. The top portion, we don't touch. All of the hours that.
Yeah, it shows, I've got it, there, so, right here.
The other thing would be
The
a
employee
potential-
master list, that tells us what we've got.
And that's something that we don't jockey with. That's not a part of what we're talking about as budget, but we certainly can, as a group, go to the county board of commissioners and ask for a person.
Look where Scott has his budget items, and there's 15 grand for contractors.
Yep.
And if we ask to increase that all we're doing is looking for a contractor that we sign a deal with to help us out.
You're splitting hairs.
It comes out of that line item. And it would come out that, yeah, we contracted this person out and they turned in 10 hours this month or whatever. That was just a thought.
I mean, I see what you're saying, but I think we're really splitting hairs there. I think if we're looking for a contracted, wouldn't be necessarily an employee, but I think it would be better to ask for that separately, as Steve is relaying. As we-
I think we
as
should
we did-
separate it out.
So are you gonna meet with Chet or what?
I can talk with Chad, but you know way more about it. You've got it all written up if you want to meet with Chad.
All right.
And then I can meet with you together, but
That'd be good. No, that'd be good if you both went and see how we could proceed.
That would be my question then, is how do we make this request? If it isn't through the budget process in the 4 forms or whatever, how do we make that request?
Chet will tell us.
Chet would be the one who would know that. So
so maybe I can get it in this, if we can meet with him before next, I have to turn this in by next Friday.
Like in 3 days?
No, 25th. A week from this coming Friday.
We'll see what he's doing after the meeting.
But as that is really beyond this budget discussion,
Maybe, you just gotta ask.
well, what I'm hearing, it's not, it's a different process.
Well, I think
It is, but
it
the
is.
I think we
timing's
start
not.
with, we
We're
start
gonna be
with Chet.
starting budget, and this
I
all
think
needs to be
we
discussed.
start with Chet.
Yeah.
There's one, well, it was just basically presented today. The committees haven't really hashed around what they would want out of it. We as a commission haven't hashed around what we would want out of it. So it's really in an initial stage, and I think Chet's the next person to talk to see where we go with this idea. And I think the idea has merit, but we need to, let's go through Chet and see where we could possibly go with this. Because we would want to know exactly detailed out what it is that we want with this person and how can we garner a person part-time to do this kind of work? You know, how do we go about it? It just landed at our feet right now. We need to, I think, go in a proper channel so we have a chance of getting it. We don't want to, in my opinion, just go and ask and then the details aren't there and the thought isn't there and we don't have it all completely tied down together. I would like to go with our best chance to get it.
You and I can meet with Chad.
Okay.
And we'll go from there. Okay, not necessarily moving on, but further discussion. This narrative, right, or this email, are these all items that you want me to put into the capital outlay?
The safety walk around should be in there. And that last paragraph says, however, would like to ask for some unbudgeted money, and everybody said, yeah, go for it. So I'm writing an RFP for that already, and it's gonna come in. And people say we have enough money floating around that they can move around. So I said, I'm not gonna go out for bids unless we think we can do it this year. So it should be in the budget with a however after it. However, we're going out for bids to do it this year, and we'll see what it comes in at. So I think there should still be an item put in there in case the bid fails, or people are saying they're too busy, or they all came down with COVID or something.
Yep.
So that should be in there. The next one should be in there. The back of the page, I think, is what Dave, you said 70, you put in for 80.
Yeah,
Probably
we
not
talked
a bad
about 80
idea.
in the
It's
previous.
10%, yeah. So we have a pretty good idea about that parking lot, and the driveways ought to come, all those words can be in there, and if they need a presentation at the meeting, when the commissioners meet, do you normally have someone up there in front?
Well, yes and no.
Yes or no?
Depends on the topic.
Or you get invited in to explain.
Stay out in the room till you get invited. So those two, I threw in number 4, which is on your back page, only because I haven't heard anybody mention this. Melinda brought it up several times, and it's in your Old Settlers wish list folder of things to do. I think we should put it in the budget to put in playground equipment at Old Settlers. It's in our plan. That plan's been there for 3 years.
Yeah, that was gonna be my request.
Oh.
But I would have asked for, yeah, no, it's fine, but I would ask for 15,000.
I was gonna say 20, just because.
Yeah.
Sure, sounds
I
good.
definitely say
20.
20. Yeah.
It is expensive, we're finding that out down at Solar Park.
They bought it for 12, but they did so much work themselves.
That was wood, right?
They put concrete and sand and everything else on. Unless we've got volunteers.
22.
And it's hard to do, they're
Yeah,
trying to do that
hard.
at Solar right now too. It's
Yeah.
very difficult.
We're not gonna do good.
I would really like to see.
Just put 20 and see what we can,
Reunion.
I mean,
Yeah.
how many $20,000 plus items can we put in capital outlay?
Well,
You gotta do it.
I mean, I don't mind asking for it, but also where does it, I don't know.
You know, a lot of times this money doesn't get spent at the end of the year, and you had all this capital, so
Yeah,
I can buy nothing.
I think what we'll need to do at a certain point is cut it down to a meeting scheduled. You know, we've got an executive committee, and then the executive committee is gonna have to deal with it and get a list and make some choices. And the public input is welcome, but we'll have to kind of organize it, I think, Casey. And good points, John, good points all. But the executive committee needs to make a list and hash it out and then see what we're gonna put. You think?
He has to do it by Friday.
Friday.
I gotta have these turned in by next Friday.
I mean, now,
Right, yeah, we're hearing some discussion here and
yeah, and
So I want,
I
it
got,
can go on and on.
so I
We need
wanted
to
to
get
move
something
on to
done.
the detail of if we're gonna put in for any parking lot upgrade. Do we want to leave out paving?
No.
Uh,
We'll put it in and have somebody else throw it out. If it gets thrown out, we gotta at least do the entryway. But, that should go submitted just like it is. There's maps along with it, and justification and stuff. If they don't wanna pave it, that's fine. We gotta fix the entryway. It'll just cost more to do it later. When those trucks are all there doing that entryway, they can have that other thing all paved in 2 hours.
Is that,
is
is that detailed? Did you have that?
this what you're talking about here, John?
No, that's the
Oh,
fishing,
that's the access, okay.
fishing access.
There was a middle for the driveway.
So, so the entrance, how much was the entrance, John?
They're about 25 grand, I think.
25,000?
I thought there was a map and everything turned in to Laurel on
Well,
Wednesday.
she had it, John, but it's my fault that I didn't get it requested to be put out for everybody today. That's why it's not here. This is the drawing of the small entrance.
But this isn't the parking lot.
It's not the
Yeah,
parking lot?
That's the whole thing, John. That's the parking lot.
This is the one that's supposed to be for the parking lot.
For a date, 'cause
It's a narrow entrance.
There's a date there in your
The
thumb.
reason is because this damn thing is in the middle and he can't plow around it and everything else. And he can't plow this way and that way. He wanted a clear path for plowing. So what do you need for the budget meeting? This is the sketch that Scott wants.
I don't necessarily need anything for the budget meeting. What I need is write out on my paper here, on the under capital outlay, line items that say parking lot redo $80,000.
You want a separate one of those for this?
No, I got a whole,
We just need numbers and we'll put a narrative
yes,
to it.
here's the paper. I'm gonna put the amount that we're gonna request for total capital outlay, whether it's 45, 50, whatever we decide, okay? And then I write, the justification behind that is list items, 80,000 for a new parking lot, da, 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 da. So you don't need all the information right now because we're not to that stage.
Well, I like to include pictures because it answers a lot of questions.
They're not really interested in pictures, they're interested in dollars, and that's,
We will look at the summaries he writes. When we get to the request from Parks, we're gonna say, okay, wow, they want, sounds like 250,000 capital outlay. What do they want? We're gonna go to supplement, and it's gonna be in there.
There is a supplement sheet. that
this
goes
is the
with it?
supplement sheet right here. But this will tell them when I write it out, why we're asking for the money, what
And
projects are we looking
probably
to
ask
do?
what your priorities are, 1, 2, and 3.
You don't need the story behind that parking lot?
Well, we can give that to them then.
From who?
Well, it would be mine and Rick's responsibility to explain it further, or they may invite Casey in to explain it further.
I'm usually there
Yeah.
they have each department head come.
Well, that's the narrative then on a parking lot right there.
Correct. I mean, yes, I will put that in this sheet.
Not that sheet.
John, you're not getting what I'm saying. I write it all out on this. I tell them what we're requesting. When we go to actually do an RFP, that's when we start including all the details in the maps and all of that stuff.
Yeah, they're not gonna care about the details.
They want to know
And
the
they ask
dollars.
why in dollars.
Why are you wanting to spend $80,000 on a parking lot? Well, it needs to be redone. This is
Right.
a project that we've been looking at. We want to decrease the size, make it much easier to maintain, pave it. There you go. And it's going to cost, estimate is $80,000.
Do we hurt ourselves in the request if we're putting in the full big request that is including the paving? As opposed to putting in a smaller request the ideas we have in mind as well, in subsequent years, we'll do the next step, then the next step, or because I've been under the impression that we were maybe better off putting in the whole package that we'd like to achieve, regardless of.
The only problem with that is that the whole package could go down. So you really probably ought to have it split, like the entryway, like John said, yeah. You do the entryway and then what the rest, but total package is this, but it can be broke down within that. 'Cause that might be just what they do. They might say, okay, well, let's do this much this year if you want,
Well,
you know.
and
Maybe
one
we
thing
can do
that's
the base for the walking trail at Mouse Kimberly, you know, this
One
year
thing that's
also.
becoming hard for me, this is something new to me, where I'm asking for more than what we're budgeted. Way over.
And I think
You know, over
in
the
that, yeah, I think in that, we can't ask for multiple items. I think, yeah, it's my opinion that we do a budget and all but one big item is in our budget. It can be covered by a budget, but we have one big item that is the number one thing that we are considering as a group, and it is this much. And we're requesting that the county board of commissioners pony up this much for a special request. And everything else is in our budget. So I don't think we can go and ask for 3-4 things,
That are,
3-4 big things. In my opinion, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud, but if I were on the county commissioner side, these guys are in budget, everything's looking cool except for this one item, and here's this one item that they really want, and it's a big one.
Well, Linda said as they go through it, Steve, then they got another page or book of details, right?
Details will come later.
they,
We'll have his written explanation about what it is, what makes up that number.
What makes up the number? Like one might be the playground equipment,
correct.
and one might be the parking lot.
Yeah.
When,
That's in a different,
the way I've done this since I've been the chairman is I look at how much are we gonna ask for in our capital outlay? If we wanna ask for an increase to 60,000 or whatever it may be, I take budget items to justify that 60,000. I don't, it's not my wish list because I'm trying to budget the money that I'm asking for. And for us to go out and ask for a $500,000 capital outlay is probably not going to do us very well.
So if I,
But this is the first time that we've had all these large projects right in front of us that these are, okay, this is the committee's wish list. Let's get some of this done. But what I'm struggling with is how to structure that into the budget. Because I have to put in here how much I'm requesting, what our budget is, actual budget, not special money, just our operating budget. So that's what I'm struggling with right now. When I was a commissioner, I never saw anybody do that where they asked for an extra $200,000 increase in their budget, especially a Parks Commission where we're not a massive department.
So what do you think of Steve's suggestion that anything we ask for above our yearly budget be one item? We choose the priority. Politically, that makes more sense to only have one big item in our request for this next year beyond our
makes
standard
sense unless
budget.
we can't cover it. Then we just shot ourselves in the foot because, well, we don't have 250,000 to give you this year, Parks, we're really sorry. We've asked for nothing else. See what I'm saying?
No, I'm sorry.
So-
They might say no, that I understand.
Right,
What I'm headed towards is I would support the paved circular walkway as our number one big budget priority for this year's budget request over any of the
that's where I was going to
others
go.
that we've talked about, because that paved walkway at Miles Kimberly was talked about the first day I was on the commission,
Yes.
5 years
It's
ago.
So
So
I,
if we're trying to come to a one single big budget, big cost item beyond budget, I'd vote for that paved walkway at Miles Kimberly.
okay, so what we should do then, and, because I don't disagree with that, because it has been our number one wish, and I know it would be heavily used, and I'm gonna always fall on the side of service. So, we probably won't get 250, but they may come back and say, well, we'll give you 80,000 for that this year. what can we do for 80,000? We've got to know that answer. What, they're gonna ask it, what if we can give you 80,000 this year, Case, can you get started on your walking trail?
Right.
Because we might have to bite it off in chunks. We're probably not gonna have, I know we're not gonna have 250,000. I just, we're
Is that how
not.
much that trail costs?
And that's what I heard earlier.
But 200,000 to 400,000 is what they've done.
I think unless we get some big donations or a big,
But what, how do I ask for that in a budget request form? Do I ask for an increase in $250,000 to our capital outlay?
you might talk to Jen about how you want to word that, but it can be in the narrative, what we're really after.
I guess maybe we decide how much we want
Number
to.
in there and they'll just knock it down if they have to. If I'm wrong and we found,
I just don't want to go and
here's
make it.
another thing. I'm sorry, I don't mean to talk.
You're fine.
I'm talking out loud. We do, it's gonna take a number of years. But we do have that, the funding money from Washington DC. We're gonna be sitting at, what, is it 4 million?
4.2.
And it sounds like a lot of it's going to be going towards maybe tower or communications or broadband, that sort of thing. But I think I think this is something that could fit under those dollars. If we fought hard for that, that may be something, because that's something the entire population can use.
Okay.
It's a health issue, it's health, it's safety, much like the Tart Trail, because it's a safe place for people to take their kids to ride their little bikes around. I can always bring that up a bunch of times too, well, if you want to, can we try to cover this under CARES dollars? Or whatever those dollars are.
And do I send out or put together the budget for if we keep the capital outlay at, it's at $45,000?
That's what it is, 45 right now.
Yeah,
And then say I need to have you
We're
guys
looking-
increase this by this one.
However you have to. word
I would
it.
increase our capital outlay anyway.
I can ask
It could be-
I
I think it needs to be a separate.
a separate thing, or a
Separate
separate
thing.
wish list, or whatever you may want to call it.
A separate request form, and Jen can help you put it together. Everything else is in budget.
Yes.
Everything's in the budget.
I'm
Now,
thinking-
we've got some big ticket items, a walkway, driveway. this
Maybe
and
the
that.
parking lot could fall under that too. if the
Yeah,
Board of
we can just say, we need an
Commissioners
extra
says, yeah, that's-
$200,000 or something. We have to.
I don't know, it's worth asking, but I would not leave our capital, let's increase our capital outlay, we've been there for a number of years, so 60, let's ask for 60,
Okay.
like you
Do
said.
you have to break down that increase from 45 to 60?
Well, he'll fill
I'll
it
just break down the 60,000.
Right, right down to 60.
He'll fill it up.
Yep,
His items would make 60.
yep, maybe
You'll
it's
fill it up.
entryway for the parking lot this year, maybe it's the playground equipment,
Right.
We have playground
And-
equipment, parking lot improvements, pickleball courts,
yep.
dog park.
There you
I
go,
mean,
the dog park,
the
Some of
dog
that
park's
could be-
$40,000, so.
but
Oh,
is the engineering for the dog park 6,000 of it, so maybe this year we can get the engineering
Yeah,
done,
maybe you
or the fencing, or
The,
whatever.
to say start a dog park project at Miles Kinley,
Bingo.
15 grand.
Yep.
However.
Yep.
That's basically what I need to know out of this meeting is where do we want to sit with capital outlay? Our other budget line items have always been in line. Scott's kept them in line over the last few years. We haven't had that. The maintenance line item did get a little out of control because of some major projects, unforeseen projects, but for the most part, everything else falls in line pretty decently. It's the capital outlay is where we really.
we just didn't spend enough these last few years.
So,
Well, we got it back, that's why they were generous enough to give it back to us, though.
right, because and we diligently did give them the money for
Tree trimming.
the 10 grand as we were applying for the grant.
So we're gonna increase capital outlay line item request from 45 to 60,000. Do you have to break down that 15 where the,
No, he'll break down the entire 60.
well, okay,
Because the capital outlay, every year when I put this together, I put together kind of a wish list or how we're gonna spend that 45 grand. And I'll do the same for the 60 to justify.
but it doesn't have to be the final
penny
No,
for
because
an item.
It's just a guess,
Got
or,
it.
you know, an
I
estimate.
understand.
if we look at it and say, well, why 65,000? Whoa, they do have a lot of things they need to get at.
Yeah, that I understand. It's not because item C costs $3,012.96. You don't have to have that kind of detail to make
Right.
it 60.
Correct. Is there any other discussion why we're here? I've got, you know,
You've got Scott's list, right?
no. Great. This is good stuff.
Yeah, so, the dog, obviously the dog park, it's just part of it.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't put the whole 40 grand in there because that takes up.
Dodge showed me, he got a paperback from Perfect Fence, 35 grand,
80, apple fence.
or Apple Fence.
Oh.
And that was 1,000 feet.
Yeah, so what's that, 250 by 250?
Yeah.
That's a lot of money for dogs.
So,
I mean, I didn't think the fence would be that.
The fencing is crazy. You can go buy, I did the same thing because we put a chain link fence around my house because we lived so close to 72. And my kid ended up in the road one day, but I got quotes and it was a ridiculous amount of money. And then I bought all the materials for $1,000 myself to put it in. It's not complicated.
It looks nice too.
Yeah, it's not hard to do. I watched a YouTube video on it and it's very
Well,
straightforward.
if you look at that quote, it's only good for 7 days.
Yeah.
is it right?
Yeah, yeah, you
The
look at-
materials,
yeah.
materials.
So you got 7 days to sign it,
Yeah.
otherwise.
Not that I expect Scott to build a dog park fence, but it's not.
But then I don't, you know,
But we could probably.
250, I'm trying to visualize how big 250 is. I mean, do we need them that big? I don't know.
It's probably twice the size of that one at TC,
Is
I'm
it?
thinking.
Yeah,
I
that
don't
one looks
think
Should be kind
small.
of gut level.
Yeah.
That one does look
Maybe
small.
split the two or something because,
So if we go, we can always make it bigger.
Right, yeah, I mean, you can add, yeah, you can add on.
They put the fence together so that,
Just
this
one
side and
end.
this side
Yeah,
can come out and we can go bigger if we want.
Is the current planning talk to have 2 sections to it, small dog, big dog?
I don't think so.
So
That was, I think, just a straight up.
Concept, but
any other budget discussion? I've got some homework to do.
Do you think Chet's still here?
we will be having a committee of the whole meeting the end of this month, where we're gonna be discussing those dollars.
Okay,
So I will bring, the 21st or the 23rd, we're meeting both dates. Because in one of those meetings, we'll be discussing what to do with those, stimulus dollars or whatever they are.
Okay.
So I will bring that up, because it might fit within infrastructure.
I don't think we're meeting in July.
Parks doesn't meet in July.
What did you just ask?
I didn't hear it. What were you asking, Melinda? 'Cause we don't meet in July.
No, I'm just making a statement that the Board of Commissioners meet twice, the 21st and the 23rd. And some of the discussion will be what we might want to do with those stimulus dollars that we've received. The funding money from Washington I was talking about. I think it has to be used for infrastructure or it can't be used, we can't return it to the taxpayers in taxpayer dollars. It can be used for broadband and infrastructure and roads that I think got, they're gonna get their own money for roads.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we might, I think parks might fall in that.
yeah, paved
Yeah.
walkway, maybe.
Yeah, because. that
I'll
might be our
entertain a
best
motion to
bet.
adjourn.
So,
Second?
All those in favor?
I.
All those opposed?
You can-